Now, hundreds of people lined up outside the Supreme Court for an opportunity to get a glimpse of what will be a landmark case. People were literally camping out overnight as others made their statements both for and against. Some have said that the long lines filled with those waiting for a seat are reflective of the long lines people will be in just to get a seat in the waiting room outside their doctor's office, as Obamacare is not repealed before it's fully implemented. Well, one of the leaders in taking, actually probably the first to challenge the federal government's overreach was Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli of Virginia. For all the excesses of the federal government, the debate over Obamacare has cast a light on some impressive leaders, and one of them is Ken Cuccinelli. Ken, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, Tony.
Now, you were one of the first attorney generals to challenge the case, or challenge the federal government in their overreach of mandating the purchasing, the mandating that people have this health care. So far, what do you think in terms of the oral arguments before the court?
Well, and of course, before they got to court, they had about 150 briefs to consider between amicus briefs and the parties, and all the justices were well prepared. Yesterday, I think, went fairly predictably. Yesterday was the Anti-Injunction Act. I don't think that's going to block the consideration of the case, so today they get to the mandate, the heart of the case. And can the federal government compel you and I and every American to buy their approved health insurance? And it was a hot bench, as a litigator would call it. All the justices spoke and had questions, except Justice Thomas, who very traditionally does not speak or have questions. There was a day and time when the Supreme Court didn't even have oral arguments. He sort of harkens back to that era. But all the other justices were heavily engaged. And you know, the most poignant point, I thought, was when Justice Kennedy said that, you know, this, speaking of the mandate, this affirmative requirement, meaning the mandate, the compulsion to buy the health insurance, is unique because it is an affirmative requirement, and it would change the relationship between the government and the people in a fundamental way. Fundamental way was his words, and that suggests to me a philosophical appreciation that runs much deeper than just this piece of legislation. And you know, people ask a lot of questions about Justice Kennedy, but he has been very consistent in defending what's called structural federalism, and that is the separation of authority between the federal government and all the state governments. And one thing that happens if the states lose this case is federalism is over. It's dead. And that is not something he has been tolerant of in the past. He is very protective of those separate spheres of authority. And like I said, that would require, in this case, striking down the mandate. And today, a lot, though not all, but a lot of what he had to say suggested he was ready to do that, as with the Chief Justice, as with Justice Scalia. It was a powerful day and a bad day for the government, I think. As I told reporters when I came out, I was happier coming out than going in. So.
Right. Now, sometimes these justices kind of hold their cards close to the vest, and they'll ask questions, but sometimes we find that they end up going a different direction.
Right.
But your sense is, from the questioning, you feel optimistic about the
yeah,
line
cautiously optimistic. I mean, I am a litigator, and I don't draw too much from what I see in the courtroom. But you know, think of those polls. If the election were held today, if the decision were based on what I saw in court, I think the mandate would be struck down. And I'd much rather be in that position than the position the federal government left the courtroom in today.
And the court, while they like to think, or like people to believe that they're immune from the political environment that surrounds us, they are not isolated from the rest of the world. They know where the American public is. And my sense is they usually are not going to push the public too far in something.
Yeah, but I think they also may make an effort as best they can as human beings to ignore and to block out those considerations when they're making a decision. At least, maybe I'm a little bit idealistic. I mean, you know, as some justices' papers get released, you know, as they pass away, like Bachmann, we learn some other things. But generally speaking, it doesn't do anybody any good to assume any different than to make the best case possible on the merits. And Paul Clement did a great job today. I mean, all the right people were squirming. You know, Ken Klukowski was near Larry Tribe today, and he was not having a good day visually to look at him. responding to what was going on in the courtroom.
So that made you feel good.
Yeah, I don't want Professor Tribe unhappy, but I want him to lose. And if those two go together and one's an indicator of the other, I'm okay with that.
You have been out front since being elected as Attorney General of Virginia, one of the first to file suit against the federal government for this case. You've been out speaking around the country on this. What is really at stake here in this decision?
That's a good question, and it goes to that comment by Justice Kennedy, the fundamental change in the relationship between government and individuals. I mean, we go from citizens to subjects. If the federal government can dictate to us that we have to buy health insurance, they can dictate to us what car to buy and that we have to buy one. And of course, they'll tell us to buy a GM, and my own theory is they'll make you buy a Chevy Equinox because I own a Chevy Equinox and you don't want a Chevy Equinox. And that's exactly the one they'll make you buy because the good ones, they don't need it.
Yeah,
so
with families like ours, they'll make us get smart cars and we'll have kids strapped to the roof.
Right, exactly. Yes, and then they'll lower all the bridges just to try to disincentivize that. But you know, this really goes to the foundation. There has never been an instance of the federal government ordering citizens to buy a product under the guise of regulating commerce.
And let me ask you this question. It's a question that's come in from a lot of different places. If the federal government can order you to buy insurance, health insurance, right, where's the line?
Well, and you know, that was the biggest challenge the federal government faced coming into court today, because in no courtroom in the country, in any of the cases, have they addressed that in an adequate fashion. And the question put to them, and it was put to them really more than once, was, all right, if this is legal, if this is constitutional, what is the boundary on federal power? And the Solicitor General said two things. Actually, he gave two rationales. One, only things where you can incur huge costs that are unexpected. Justice Alito said, what about burial costs? You get hit by a bus and you could go to the hospital, or you get hit by a bus, a smaller bus, or a bigger bus, I guess, and go to the morgue. And if you haven't prepared for that, that's thousands of dollars. And if I can't afford that, and that goes to the second argument by the Solicitor General, is that those costs will be shifted to other people. Well, staying with Justice Alito's example, if I haven't prepared for my burial, right, you and the other taxpayers are going to pay for it. So both of them fell, and Justice Alito was aggressive about that. The Chief Justice was aggressive with his own examples. But that was the question the federal government had to answer. And I do not think that they adequately addressed that question to the satisfaction of the justices.
Because if you think about it, really, whatever could be compelling in the intensity at that moment in the broader society, right, you could make an argument that the government has a right, legitimate role to step in.
Well, and the Chief Justice said, okay, you want to deal with problems in the healthcare market by ordering everybody to buy health insurance. So and you say we're all in the healthcare market. If that's enough to let you introduce this mandate, in the next case you'll come in and you'll say everybody's in the healthcare market so we can order this. And Justice Scalia cut in and said, and when you answer that question, I want you to address exercise. Think about that. So what Justice Scalia appeared to be contemplating was a joke I've made all over the place, is, you know, show me your exercise chart. Are you obeying the law? Because now I'm going to mandate your exercise program. And then I'm going to mandate your meal program.
Well, my kids would say nothing has changed at home. It just, instead of Dad doing it, it'll be the government.
You know what? Home isn't a democracy, right, and it isn't supposed to be.
It's a benevolent dictatorship.
That's exactly right. Most of the time it's benevolent, yeah. And but this country is it's not only a republic, it's a compound republic. It is a republic in terms of our federal government, and all the states are republics, and there is a tension between them. It's supposed to be there. Yes. And what us states are doing in this case this is federalism in action. We are pushing back on a federal government that is trampling our Constitution. We have sued to protect the U.S. Constitution from the federal government, exactly as the founders intended, Federalist 45 to 51, written by a Virginian, as I recall.
You're absolutely right. Ken Cuccinelli,
good to see you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all that you're doing.
Glad to do it. Just wish we didn't have to.
Well, we're glad you're there. Thank you.